Hi, I'm Marysia with AH Beads, and today I will be doing a tutorial on crimping beading wire. For this project, you'll need your beading wire. I'm using a 49 strand .08 millimeter steel nylon coated wire. You're going to need the beads of your choice. You will also need crimp beads. I'm using 1.3 millimeter silver plated donut shaped crimp beads. You'll also need a clasp, as well as a pair of chain nose pliers and cutters. You also have the option of using something called a bead stopper, which is, we'll go over that in the next few minutes. So I will start by stringing my beads onto my wire. If you're worried about losing beads as you're stringing off the raw end, you can use a little masking tape on the tip just to kind of act as a stopper, or you can use a stringing accessory called a bead stopper. It was what we had in the package before. It's like a little spring that has a little handle. They have a little handle on either side, and all you have to do is just squeeze, and that actually opens up the spring, and then you just insert the tip of your wire into that spring and just let it go gently, and it actually grips quite securely, so it can take a lot of weight. It's good for heavier stringing, and so now all we have to do is start stringing. So I'm making a bracelet. I'm just going to string it, and then we'll move on to crimping. So we reached the desired length of bracelet, and before we crimp or clasp on, we just want to try it on, either yourself or whoever you happen to be making it for. And you want to check that, one, it fits comfortably, and two, there's enough space left behind that accounts for the clasp. So this looks about perfect. And all I have to do is crimp it. So I'm going to start by taking one of those little donut shaped silver plated crimp beads and feeding it onto the end of my wire. I'm also going to take my clasp, one side of the clasp, doesn't really matter what side you use, and feed it on right next to that crimp bead. So you put the crimp bead on first and then the clasp. And then I'm going to take the tip of my wire, and I'm going to hold my little crimp bead in place, and I'm going to feed right back through that wire. You can see I'm giving myself about 2 inches of working room with my end piece. And I'm just going to take that little crimp bead, and I'm going to grab it with my fingers and push it up toward the clasp, and you'll see it creates a nice closed little loop. You don't want it to be too tight, and you don't want it to be too loose. Just use your judgment. And I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and I just have to close over that crimp bead and squish down. So we're just squishing that little crimp bead flat. Now when you're crimping, you want to use quite a bit of force. If you don't use enough force, it can kind of wiggle free. You'll usually notice that if it's not tight enough, there'll be a bit of pillowiness to the crimp bead. It should be completely flat, and that's when you know that it's secure. Now this little end piece here, ideally, whenever possible, it's good to feed that back through at least one of your beads. I'll feed this end all the way through. So, and anything sticking out, you can just trim. Okay, so now we have to shift everything over, and we're going to do exactly the same thing with the other side, except there's a bit of a different step to it. So we're going to take another one of our crimp beads and feed it on. And we're going to take the other side of our clasp as well and feed that on. And then we're going to grab our end, and I just like to hold the two pieces of wire together. I'm just going to put the crimp bead over both of the wires. So I fed my wire back through the crimp bead, and I'm also going to feed my wire through one or two of my beads. We'll just do one. So now all we have to do to pull this whole thing up tight is to grab the raw end of our wire and hold on to your clasp, and then all I do is just pull it up, and it should pull tight. Now, before you crimp, of course, you want to test the clasp. You want to test the bracelet for tension. If it's strung too tightly, it's going to be a little stiff once you clasp it. You can also try it on if you're careful, and just test that it fits, and it's pretty good. So all we have to do is crimp the other end, and then just like before, take my chain nose pliers and close over the crimp bead and just squish down with a good amount of force. And then all we have to do is just cut out this excess, this piece that's sticking out from between our beads. I'm just going to take my cutters, just pull on the wire that's sticking out, and push your cutters up against the hole of the bead and cut down. And it cuts very close to the wire. And that's it. That's a simple beading wire bracelet or necklace, and you can use this for all sorts of different beads with all different clasps.